Looking at this Centre for Cities report that was published first thing this morning, which said for every 12 people who found work since 2004 in cities in southern England, London and the southeast, only one was hired in cities in the rest of the country. Let me just pick out some of the cities that saw the highest growth. Milton Keynes, London, Cambridge, Brighton, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, Coventry. Then if you look at those that saw the least growth, in fact fell, Gloucester was the worst performing, followed by Rochdale, Blackpool, Newport, Hull, Grimsby, and then Huddersfield. Let's talk now to Kevin Rowles, recently retired economics lecturer at the University of Huddersfield. Kevin, good evening.
Hello.
Has there always been this, what seems to be quite huge divide between the way London performs and the rest of the country?
Yes, it goes back really about 100 years. Actually, during the, if we go back 150 years, we would look at a country where, in fact, it was the other way around. People moved from the south to the north as the new industries develop. But for about 100 years now, there's been a relative decline in the north of England relative to the south.
And could, had they wanted to, successive governments have done something about it?
Well, successive governments have done. In fact, there have been various policies that go back to the 1930s to mainly to try and attract industry from away from the south to the north, and also encourage new business to establish itself in the less prosperous parts of the country. So it's been an ongoing process for many years.
And why do you think it hasn't worked?
Well, basically because the economics is against it. The very size of London acts as a magnet. So, for instance, during the 1930s, as the old traditional industries, textiles and shipbuilding, began to run into difficulties, you saw in the areas around London the development of the new consumer goods industries. For instance, in Slough, you had the vast trading estate there. So the biggest market was in the south. So these new industries producing consumer goods, early washing machines, that sort of thing, they wanted to set up in the south as opposed to the north.
So if offering financial incentives to industry to relocate or locate for the first time in the north has not worked, what else could help? I mean, we hear talk about plans for faster rail links, for example.
Yes, there's the general trend of policy has come away really from paying industry to move in, except there are still grants given to companies who are coming into the country. There are various benefits available to them if they set up in less prosperous parts of the country. So you have the Japanese car producers in the northeast of England. But the present government has certainly seen the argument for that if you get a better infrastructure, that will help the north to prosper relatively.
Why have they not habitually had the same problem, say, in France or Germany?
Well, they have different sorts of economies. I mean, in France, there's the gap between the richest and the poorest regions is much smaller than it is here. Though I should point out that in this country, the situation is distorted by London, because in fact London is way ahead of any other region. And in fact, I think there's only the eastern region is the only other region in the United Kingdom that has a GDP per capita that is above the national average. That gives you some idea of how dominant London is and how far ahead it is of the rest of the country. But if you take France, France has got Paris, but then in fact its population is relatively evenly spread across much of the rest of the country. We haven't had that. Over a third of the population in this country now lives within the southeast of England.
What about if we were to compare ourselves with the USA?
Well, in America, America is quite different from ourselves and also Europe, because in America there is a tradition that people move. People are much more mobile. They have a much stronger market system in America. So, for instance, if you lose jobs in one part of America, people will move quite long distances. So we have the situation that cities like Detroit, which were important in the car industry years ago, they in fact have experienced very significant decline. Tens of thousands of people have simply left. That doesn't tend to happen in Europe. There is some labour mobility geographically, but generally, for various reasons, we tend to stay where we are.
Now, since the Scottish referendum, there's been much talk about devolution of powers and tax-raising powers even within the regions of England. Can you see that making a difference?
I can't, because one of the problems with that is, well, what taxes do you start to vary? And it would be very difficult in a relatively small geographical area to avoid competition. So, for instance, it may well be that, say, the north of England reduces, say, corporation tax to attract in new business, but then, of course, another part of the country may decide, well, they're going to undercut that rate. You have this problem that exists in the island of Ireland, where you have two very different corporation taxes in the north, part of Britain or the United Kingdom, and the Republic of Ireland. And in fact, the north of Ireland, the government in Belfast, is in fact trying to persuade the Chancellor to allow them to introduce a lower rate of corporation tax to try and match that in the Republic.
So if devolution isn't going to make any difference...
I don't think so, because I think the problems really are so big, they're so wide-ranging that in fact nothing has significantly happened in the past that's changed the situation. We should be careful when we're talking about this north-south divide. We should remember that it's not quite as clear-cut as north-south implies, because in fact if you take the south of England, there are some very deprived parts of the south, East London, some of the seaside resorts. On the other hand, of course, there are some parts of the north of England that are very wealthy.
Kevin, it's been really good to talk to you tonight. Thank you for making it all so clear. Kevin Rowles, recently retired economics lecturer at the University of Huddersfield.
The University of Huddersfield, inspiring tomorrow's professionals.